Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of the Mission Matters Money Podcast, your source for all things money. My name is Adam Torres. You can follow me on Instagram at AskAdamTorres. Keep up with my book releases, book tour schedule, signings, all that other good stuff. Always love to connect with you there. And as always, if you'd like to apply to become a co-author of one of my upcoming books, just head on over to the website, missionmatters.com, and click on Become an Author to apply. All right, so today I have Mark Seither on the line. He's a partner and wealth manager over at Kingsview Partners, and he's also co-host at the Wealth Preservation Podcast. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm super happy to be on.
Oh, man, Mark, so excited for this episode. So we're going to talk about financial planning for entrepreneurs. Ton of entrepreneurs listening to this right now, and they need your help. We all need your help as entrepreneurs, so I'm excited to get into this. And we're also going to get into the Wealth Preservation Podcast. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit more about what you're doing over at Kingsview Partners. Tell us a little bit more about your firm, please.
Yes. So me and my business partner, we work with a lot of entrepreneurs in some niche markets on financial planning, investment strategy, and really we're a little different in the sense that I always tell people if we're talking about investments and rate of return for more than 5 to 10 minutes in a meeting, wasting our time, right? I think there's far more, especially on the entrepreneur side, I think there's far more important topics to talk about that have to integrate with the financial plan that aren't exactly investment related. So while we're an investment advisor, we take pride in saying, hey, we're not the most important people in your life, and we got to make sure that those other important pieces mesh together in what we're doing.
No, that's awesome. And I think that's a great transition to today's topic. So financial planning for entrepreneurs. I mean, entrepreneurs they're a special set of individuals, and I'll be upfront. So I haven't been in the financial planning space in many years now, but I did it for almost going on 14 years, over 12 years. And entrepreneurs are hard to work with, and I know why, because now I'm an entrepreneur on that side of the table, but I used to be on the side of the table working with them too. So where do you want to start this topic? Because I just wanted to set the stage and get the attention of all the entrepreneurs listening. So turn this up. Where do you want to start with this one, Mark?
Yeah, so I'd say probably you're very right in saying they're just entrepreneurs are a different breed, right? And it's mainly because they have about 36 hours worth of work that they got to do in 24 hours, and at some point they've got a nap, right? I mean, that's the nature of their life, and so
fact.
When you come to them with, hey, look, there's these really cool mutual bonds or ETFs or stocks or whatever, they just don't care, nor do I think they really should. And really, we try and work with them on probably the most important thing, and this is where a lot of them really connect, is an 8% rate of return, 8% rate of return, on a taxable growth. That's not sexy to an entrepreneur. Saving 12% in taxes or saving 22% in taxes, that's sexy, right? They're more interested in that. And also looking at, hey, working in a more asset-protected environment, that's also sexy. So we try and work with them on, if we're looking at some long-term planning, there's going to be instances where you're going to look back and say, man, I really wish I would have capitalized on either that piece of the tax code or that piece of legislation or different things. Instead of being that entrepreneur that looks back and saying, I wish I would have back then, we try and play out those scenarios moving forward and just say, hey, right now, here's the opportunity, has nothing to do with your rate of return, has nothing to do with any of this stuff, but if you do it now, we're looking at, potentially a huge upside or at least a huge, we're going to stretch these dollars a lot longer if we make these moves now. It usually comes in hand with, we have to be working very closely with their CPA as well.
So I know this is going to vary from entrepreneur to entrepreneur, person to person. I know no two people's situation is the same, but I do know certain themes tend to arise over time in any niche, whether it's entrepreneurs, whether you're working with just doctors, whether you're working with just lawyers. They typically have some of the same issues. Where do you find entrepreneurs typically go wrong? And kind of like, and when you get a new client and you're like, oh, I kind of already know what's going to be wrong in this situation, where do you find that they're typically kind of missing the boat on this?
So I would say from a tax standpoint, they are constantly kicking the can down the road, saying, hey, we can defer this here, we can have this, we can roll this into this, we can, avoid capital gains here. And they're doing all this again, kicking the can down the road. And at some point you look up and you're like, oh my gosh, there's no more road for me to kick this can. And, especially on the doctor's front, right, or on the commercial pilot's front, they go to retire and they're like, wow, I'm going to retire. I'm not taking a huge step back in my lifestyle though. So I'm kind of stuck with my tax bracket, and all of a sudden that $3.5 million 401k, that doesn't look as big when you know that, Uncle Sam is going to get about a third of it. So we try and work with them on, hey, where are some opportunities that we can work on, setting up Roth conversions, right? And that's probably the first focus we look at is we say, hey, right now is a good example of we are in some of the lowest tax rates that we are probably ever going to be in for a long time, right? Whether it's good, bad, irrelevant, the tax rates are low. And so for some of our clients, if they're, maybe they sold a business and they're not going to be making money for the next couple of years, or maybe they had a huge loss carry forward, opportunity zones are a thing. Accelerated depreciation is also another topic that we've worked with some entrepreneurs on. The vehicle doesn't matter. It's how do we sync our tax, where we sit in the tax brackets today, and then let's try and either fund like Roth 401k or convert pre-tax dollars into those Roth buckets. And, kind of the end benchmark that we work with our entrepreneurs on is if I can get you to where you hit that retire button and you've got about 5 to 7 years of totally tax-free income, right? So theoretically, we're going to be pulling, we'll just average in the middle, 6 years of we're living and not paying taxes because it's all, in the tax-free environment. That kind of has multiple impacts on the life of the financial plan, right? So A, there's the tax savings in those first 6 years. That's awesome. B, you get the opportunity to maybe at that point say, hey, I'm not paying any taxes. Maybe I want to take, if we're doing this with you, it'd be maybe I want to take future Adams money converted at the lower tax rates today. Secondly, one of the things that people consistently say when they look at their 401k and how much it's growing on the tail end of those years is they're like, man, I wish I could go back and do more. And, I wish I would have saved earlier or whatnot. It's like, well, you can't. But maybe we could take those 6 years and tack them onto the end of your 401k's life, right? So instead of retiring and pulling from your 401k, we have 6 years of tax-free income. We get to just let that 401k ride for another 6 years, right? That compound interest scale, we're going to make a whole bunch of money in those 6 years. So, trying to connect entrepreneurs with like, hey, I know we want to, we got to balance it out. We got to work with the CPA. The CPA has to have an intimate knowledge of these things. But we have to look at what are some ways where we can, throughout your life, either look at tax advantageous code, such as accelerated depreciation or low tax rates, try and sync your tax liability today and pre-fund some of these tax-free vehicles. And then how do we systematically liquidate out of these things to, again, minimize your taxes in retirement, but then also tack on more years of exponential growth in that 401k.
No, well said, Mark, and big deal. Basically, helping entrepreneurs avoid that tax bomb that's definitely going to come if it's not properly planned for. If you don't even know what the tax bomb is that you're about to hit, then you guys definitely need to give Mark and his team a call. So, final question, Mark. So, two-part question. First off, I do want you to plug and talk about your podcast. So, I always love to introduce different podcasts to my audience. So first off, name of the podcast, also where people can find it. Second off, if somebody does want to follow up and learn more about Kingsview Partners, how do they do it?
Yeah, so Wealth Preservation Podcast, essentially, we have our niche and, we have our strategies, but we have, by working with lots of entrepreneurs, I think it's a lot like what you do with your podcast, right? Like you want to have people on that have a strategy and a story to tell. And that's kind of a learning base, right? Well, for a lot of entrepreneurs, just hearing their story of taking a concept, an idea, and how they either got that, they got that product on the shelves, or they got that service out there, or they became market dominant. Those stories, there's just a lot of information that one can pull from them. And, it's very inspiring and helpful for aspiring entrepreneurs. So we wanted to give a platform for people who had been successful, not to come on and sell themselves, but to just tell their story so that, other people can learn from, hopefully learn from their mistakes, right? So it's a Wealth Preservation Podcast. You can find it on, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher. We have a website, wealthpreservationpodcast.com. And so, we do about 2 episodes a month. And you can also find it on YouTube.
And then if somebody wants to connect and learn more about Kingsview Partners, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, so go ahead and follow me on Twitter, Facebook, or LinkedIn. I get most people contact me directly through the Wealth Preservation Podcast. That's kind of the main mode of my marketing. So you can always reach me on the wealthpreservationpodcast.com, or again, go ahead and connect with me on LinkedIn or Twitter. My handle is less tax, more beer.
I love it. Less tax, more beer. I'm in. Well, Mark, really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing more about your background, all the great work that you're doing. I'm really helping entrepreneurs with their financial planning. So great stuff there. We all need your help. And to the audience, as always, thank you for tuning in. Hope you got value out of this. If you did, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, leave me a review on the Apple iTunes Store, and if you're watching this on our YouTube channel, Mission Matters Money, definitely give us a subscribe there, but leave us some comments on the video. Love to know what kind of projects and things that you're working on. And Mark, thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you, Adam.